So far up until this point, you've sent a drip message sequence to the prospect before that initial call. You've held a discovery call with the prospect, and then you sent over case studies, content, or valuable resources between that first and second call. These are all touch points to help you build trust and get up to the point of this presentation call. In this video, I'm going to walk through how to structure a presentation call, as well as give you a rough template that you can work from for a sales presentation. Again, this may be altered or slightly different depending on if you're selling a software product, a service, depending on what that looks like, but a lot of the principles can stay the same. So you want to open up this presentation call with a simple kind of question. You'll say, hey, so I've got a presentation that I'm going to walk you guys through today, which shares a bit more about how we work. But before we dive in, is there any other updates or anything else I should know before I dive in and share? Sometimes, again, there may be some updates, there may be some new developments. Those are really relevant things, and so you want to give that prospect, again, a chance to be heard and understood before you just dive into your presentation. Then as soon as you're ready, then you're able to go ahead and dive into a presentation with that prospect. Now this presentation that I'm going to share with you, and you'll see some samples and examples below, is going to be about 90% templated with some simple few slides that are adjusted for that particular prospect. So here's what that deck typically looks like. The first slide is a simple cover slide for that prospect, and then you very quickly click into an agenda. And that agenda is going to say that you're going to first revisit and align on key points from the previous call. Then you're going to share recommendations and thoughts for that prospect. And then finally, you're going to share an overview of your services, your pricing, and how you can help. With the goal of this is that they have a clear understanding of what it is you do and how you work. Now, after that, what you're going to do is you're going to dive into a situation slide. This is a chance for you to reiterate back to the prospect a lot of the things you heard on that first call. You're going to share many of the notes that you've heard from that prospect, many of the quotes that you even heard from them. You're going to make sure that you demonstrate that you clearly understand them and their company. And so again, this only takes a few minutes to build, but you take some of those key notes from there. I love putting in an actual quote, something the prospect said in there. And then what you do is at the end of the slide, you read this back to them and you say, does that all sound about right? And they'll say, yeah, this is great. You're a great listener. That's right on point. And that's exactly what you want to happen. You want them to feel like they've been heard and understood. The next slide you're going to dive into is objectives. And this again is kind of an expansion of the situation, but what are the key objectives you heard? This often comes from what does success look like for you in 6, 12, 24 months from now? Whenever you get those key success criteria from a prospect, you start to put those in there so it's clear that you understand what that client's objectives are as it relates to your product or service. Once again, when you finish this, you may say, does this sound all well and aligned? Is this good to you? And they may say yes, or they may have some updates on this situation or objective slide. I often love to just dive in, type updates right there on the screen with them if it's possible. And that's just, again, a great way to show you're aligned and you care and you listen to what the prospect has to say. So once they feel like they've been heard and understood, you're going to go ahead and you're going to share an overview of your services and how you specifically can help them. This is where you put together a presentation that walks through very simply what it is you do. As much as you can break this down into visuals without much text, it's going to make that very easy for the prospect to digest. And so this is going to be a short, about 5-minute period where you're simply going to walk the prospect through what it is you do. You're also going to talk a bit about the process, what they need to expect. You're going to answer some of the biggest questions, such as, what are the time commitments? Who am I going to be working with? What are my contacts going to be? Whatever those key questions are that often come up for you, you want to weave those into a presentation. And so this is something that you're going to build on and iterate on over time. For example, if you are consistently seeing the question of, okay, well, who's my point of contact? Then you're going to probably want to weave in a slide that has some of that information. If someone's going to ask, what does onboarding look like? You're going to want to weave in some slides that give that information. Your goal is to eventually have this deck answer your most common questions, so you anticipate that all before the prospect even asks it. And that way it feels, again, professional and like you just know exactly what is coming from them before they even ask it. Once you get through this presentation on what it is you do and how it works, you're going to go into some social proof. And at this point, you're going to share a success story of a similar customer. At this point, you may have several success stories that you actually pull from and you custom tailor. Maybe you have a case study in the healthcare industry or in the tech industry or in the financial industry. And so it's often very helpful to have a number of different case studies that you can slide in and out of this deck that makes it very relevant and specific to your prospect. And once you get through the social proof, then going to move into pricing and packaging. And once again, at this point, you're going to say, before I dive into the pricing, packaging, how all of that works, is there anything else I should know or any other questions you have? Once again, giving the client a chance to be heard and understood before you dive into the numbers. At this point, you're going to dive into the pricing and the packaging for the customer. At this point, it is almost always a great idea to have multiple options for them to choose from. What you don't want to do is give someone a yes, no option. You want to give them a which choice am I going to take option. And so giving someone what are the specific, 2 or 3 options that they could go with, and what are your specific recommendations for them. After you go through the specific pricing, you're also going to want to have a simple page on all the terms. What are the nitty-gritty questions that they're going to ask? What are the things, the objections, what about this about pricing? What are all those terms? So you'll have another slide at the end of that presentation with the specific terms that answer any of those hard questions. And so this is the core of your presentation and how all of that works. Very straightforward, very simple. And at this stage, again, you're going to typically hear from a prospect because they've already been qualified on budget. You're going to typically hear something along the lines of this sounds great, or maybe we need a little bit of time, but you're going to start to hear a number of things. Now at this stage, you need to realize a few simple things. Is that first, they may not be ready to buy today. Even though they wanted the presentation, they wanted the full overview of your pricing, they may still need time. This might be them curious and them shopping for a purchase that they're looking to make 3 months down the road. So be patient and start to ask them, okay, what does the right timeline look like for you? That's another very important question of understanding their timeline of getting started here. Also, you want to understand, what does the decision process look like? Is there anyone else who's involved? Do you have a business partner? Do you have to get this approved by your boss, or is there a board or committee? What does that decision process look like, and making sure to understand that for them so you can help guide them through that. But your goal is at this point that you have buy-in from the person that you're on the phone with, that they want to go forward with it. And if this is the case, then your goal is to simply answer their questions and start talking about the next steps or what that timeline looks like. And once again, here's the next really important action. Make sure a next call is on the books, no matter what. This is a great sales practice all around, but essential for outbound leads. Always keep a next call on the books. Even if they say, we're probably not gonna be ready for this for about 3 months, that's great. Well, let's just get a tentative time on the calendar so we can resync again, in September or whenever that would be. And so you just get a call on the books. If someone says 30 days out, okay, get a call on the books for 30 days out. The goal is to keep that momentum and get that call scheduled now and get them committed to that. Because if they're really serious about going forward, they're going to keep scheduling more calls with you. If they say hesitation, they say, oh, no, let's just schedule whenever that is, that might be a sign that they're not actually ready to buy. But as much as you can always keep that next call on the calendar, that's going to keep the deal momentum going. I've had customers who I scheduled calls with every 3 months for a year before they closed. And every single time we got on, the answer was, not quite ready yet, not quite ready, but think it's coming. And at some point when they're ready to go, and when they're ready to buy, you're the choice because you've been professional and you've showed up there with them and you've stayed top of mind for that entire length of until they're ready to buy. So that's the high level overview of the presentation process. In the next video, we're going to dive a bit more into the follow-up process and how to handle these leads over a longer period of time.